Okay, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections and Voter Registration Special Called Meeting. The date is October 3rd. The time is 4:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. And I believe the published version had an error, so the chair will entertain a motion to correct that. But the agenda I'm looking at is the correct one, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Shirley.
I would move to amend the agenda, the originally published agenda, by renaming item C, call for referendum election on November 8, 2022 on the homestead exemption question to be included per HB 797.
Okay, great. Do we have a second? I'm happy to second that if another. Mr. Kadir, second. All those in favor of that change, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Okay. All those in favor of adopting the agenda as amended, raise your hand or signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Next item on the agenda is public comment. We did receive a few emails. Mr. Shirley, are you prepared to read those for us real quickly?
I am.
Would you please do so?
All right. The first one that I have received was from Mara Zuniga. Greetings, members of the Board of Elections. I would like the following questions written as public comment to be addressed and be read out loud. Who is the superintendent referenced in OCGA section 45-13-24? Did the superintendent receive a copy of the act accompanied by a certificate showing the date the act regarding the homestead exemption was passed as required by OCGA section 45-13-24? Did the governing authority receive a copy of the act accompanied by a certificate showing the date the act regarding the homestead exemption was passed as required by OCGA section 45-13-24? If so, what is the date the notification from SOS was received? Who was the notification addressed to? The mayor objected to passage of the act as evidenced by his email dated March 29, 2022 to each legislator. What is the reason the question was omitted from the November 8th ballot? If so, who made that decision? Thank you, Mara Zuniga. The commenter has a portion of an email they've pasted in here. Shall I continue reading that, Mr. Chair? I believe you're muted. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was. My cursor was. Let's go ahead and skip that because the entire thing will be printed and included with the minutes when it's published.
Understood. Okay. Shall I go to the next one then?
Please. Would you mind just reading them all? Your voice is so beautiful and melodic to us all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next comment is from Joan Roden. Public comment to be read aloud at the 10/3/22 BOE meeting. Superintendent of Elections, 5-member Board of Elections. The Clarke County Board of Elections and the governing authority, municipality, mayor, and commission, have a responsibility to the taxpayers of this county, specifically to the homeowners who supply such a large tax base. With that in mind, a law, HB 797, by the Georgia legislature, obligated this county to give voters the opportunity to decide if they wanted money in their pockets by increasing the current homestead exemption. The law took effect in April of this year. However, the body given authority over the election ballots that you and I are asked to trust happened to overlook a law passed that requires the November 8, 2022 ballot to include a referendum to increase the homestead exemptions. To omit this referendum would be legally criminal. If a diligent voter had not been alert and noticed that the Clarke County sample ballot he pulled just last week did not contain the homestead exemption question, we would be sitting today with a similar situation as we had to address at a recent Board of Elections meeting regarding an AWOL commissioner who left her post in the dead of night, expecting that the citizens of Athens and her own district might just overlook the fact that this was about to put a huge burden on the backs of the Director of Elections and leave her constituents in District 2 without representation. Here we are once again having to deal with unnecessary chaos that centers around the Board of Elections. Who dropped the ball on the homestead exemption referendum, originally not appearing on the ballot? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that ballots are correct? According to Georgia OCGA code, the superintendent of elections of this county municipality is responsible. Upon research, it becomes apparent that there is a lot of misinformation, confusion based on this OCGA terminology of superintendent. It seems straightforward if you look at the Georgia code and if you read the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections and Registration Creation Document number 216. House Bill number 735, an act to create the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections and Registration to provide for a definition to empower said board with the power and duties of the election superintendent relating to the conduct of elections, to empower said board with the powers and duties of the Board of Registrars, etc. Section 1, as used in this act, the term board means the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections and Registration. So, when a law is passed, giving homeowners in Clarke County an opportunity to vote on whether or not their homestead exemption should be increased, putting money back into the pockets of homeowners whose property values have been artificially inflated, it should be a priority of this body. This is a tax burden levied on the very people who are supplying the tax base for Athens-Clarke County. It will be interesting to enlighten the uninformed voters of Athens that a letter from Mayor Kelly Gertz was sent to the legislature opposing the passing of the HB 797, giving the taxpayers opportunity to vote on an increase in their homestead exemption. That letter is dated March 2022. A subsequent article in the flagpole further attested to the referendum that would appear on the November 8 ballot when passed. There is no lack of information available to anyone interested that this referendum should have been on this ballot. But had it not been for a voter who has the best interest of Athens and the pocketbooks of struggling homeowners on his mind, this referendum would have been left off of those ballots. According to the Georgia Code, there is either negligence, deceit, or an attempt to suppress information from the voters could be assumed given all the details of this omission. The Superintendent of Elections of Clarke County should address the responsibilities they swore to on the oath they read at every Board of Elections meeting, and at all times truly, impartially, and faithfully perform my duties in accordance with the Georgia laws, according to OCGA 14-25-34. Had it not been brought to their attention by a voter, the Board of Elections, referred to in the OCGA Georgia Code as Superintendent of Elections, has failed to fulfill that oath in regard to the HB 797 homestead exemption referendum. Respectfully, Joan Roden. The third and final comment that I've received is from Gordon Roden. Public comment to be read out loud. In regard to the homestead exemption referendum, HB 797, if the Board of Elections cannot be trusted to give accurate information, how can the people of Athens-Clarke County trust anything that the Board of Elections is doing? It is necessary to question whether the voters of ACC can rely on an unbiased and transparent Board of Elections. Is the Board of Elections carrying out what is best for Clarke County or what is best for Kelly Gertz? Gordon Roden. That was the last I had received, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I did not receive any additional staff. Did you receive any public comment that was not sent to us?
We did not.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the call for referendum election on November 8, 2022 on the homestead exemption question to be included per House Bill 797 from the most recent legislative session. At this point, I think it's best to turn over to the director and let her kind of give us a synopsis of where we are, what happened, and where we're going from here.
Yes, so I will gladly give you a timeline of this action. On September 19th, the ballots were approved and signed off. The ballot project was transmitted to both printers, Fort Orange Press and Tatnall Ballot Solutions. On the 20th of September, we began our LNA process on September 27th. And then we published our sample ballot on September 28th. On that same day, I received an email from Chairman Raffle, as well as I was informed simultaneously by Manager Williams that there was a question that was omitted from the ballot, it didn't show on the ballot. I informed our ballot builder immediately by email at about 8 o'clock p.m. on that day. I requested the sample ballots to be removed from our website and requested that our ballot printer to cease from printing if they're still printing, and informed them that a new ballot project would be forthcoming. The ballot was corrected and a proof was received the following day about 10 a.m. I contacted the Secretary of State's office for a title, and the request was, or suggestion was, to use special election. I contacted the board, you guys, our office did via email for a need to hold a special called meeting at 10:07 a.m. that day. At 11:45, same day, I signed off on the ballot for approval. The ballot project was transmitted to our printers around 12:56 p.m. That was again on September 29th. Approximately 1:45, one member of our staff drove over to Marietta to pick up the new ballot project. That evening, the board agenda was posted. On that evening as well, a new email went out to our Uakava voters. Well, actually, that was sent on 9/30, September 30th. We spoke with our ballot builder about a title on the ballot and confirmed the need to change, and that was this morning. We contacted our ballot printers to cease from printing. Were contacted later that they would receive a new ballot project. I approved and signed off on that ballot at 1:15 p.m. today. The ballot project was transmitted to our printers. We confirmed that the notification was not forwarded to us, either to me, the Board of Elections, or our government, as mandated in Official Code 451324. I did confirm that that notification was not sent by the legislative director. I also confirmed that we will receive our printed ballots by Thursday from Tatnall Ballot Solutions, and I will be finalizing today our ballot packets for mailing for Fort Orange to confirm that we are on schedule.
Okay, thank you, Director. Does the attorney's office, Ms. Pappas or Mr. Drake, have anything to add to that? And then after that, we'll have board members take turns, whoever wishes to go first.
Chairman Raffle, I did just want to explain quickly the reason for amending the agenda instead of calling for a special election to call for the referendum election is that pursuant to OCGA 45-13-24, it specifies that there is a difference between a local referendum and a special election, and that this is not a special election, this is a local referendum. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you. I have a question on that, but I'll wait until later. Mr. Drake, did you have anything to add before we go to Mr. Shirley?
No, sir.
Okay. I saw Mr. Shirley's hand first out of the corner of my eye, but if someone else was first, please go first.
You can go ahead, Hank.
The chair recognizes Mr. Kadir.
I just want to confirm with our director and make sure that I understand this. The process broke down because the process in the legislature, after it was approved, did not notify us as it was supposed to with a certified letter and a copy, like it's supposed to go to each one of the election superintendents, or at least the election director. Do I understand that correctly?
That I signed off on September the 19th did include all of the content of the ballot as prescribed by law, except with exception to what we were not informed of. Yes.
The chair recognizes Mr. Shirley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Salisbury, I have this, and I was thinking of the same thing that Mr. Kadir is. In other situations, other years, when referendum questions like this are approved by the state, around what time of year? I know that the legislature adjourns in April. Around what time of year usually have you experienced them transmitting that to us? Is it pretty prompt in April or May, or is it usually later on in the summer? What's your experience been?
Yes, it's usually prompt shortly after that, and I would make a folder that says hold for general election, and then I would grab that and attach it to our ballot content.
Gotcha. And then I think maybe I misunderstood, or I didn't hear what Mr. Kadir heard. Usually when that is transmitted, is there a very direct process? Like there's a certified letter that comes to you and a duplicate copy that goes to somebody else? Is it that kind of thing?
Well, I usually get a certified copy of the act where it's been signed by the governor, but I didn't receive that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kadir, hold on. Let's check with the others first. Ms. Fambro or Ms. Till, do you wish to go?
Yes, I'd like to ask a couple questions. I think Mr. Kadir said that the legislature dropped the ball in not notifying us, and it's my understanding, as we've been going through this process and learning, that the legislature did their duty, and this was supposed to go to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State notifies the governing bodies. And that might be the mayor, it might be Director Sosby, and it certainly would be the superintendent, which even Attorney Judd has said many times is actually the 5-member board. And I'm wondering if a notice went out to the board, would that be sent to each individual member in an email or a text that each of us would know about it?
Ms. Till, was that question directed to Ms. Sosby? Who was it directed to?
Yes, Director Sosby may answer that, or Attorney Judd. I mean, I'm not sure who would have that answer, but anybody that would have an answer for that.
The chair also recognizes the manager if he wishes to answer that.
Well, I'm not sure how the notice goes out. The one thing I do want to share, Chair, is that this was something that in the statute, I'm not the attorney, I would defer to them, but Director Sosby was able to share with us late last week where it's the Secretary of State's office. Director Sosby mentioned the legislative director. Well, that's, you know, the Secretary of State's office is the one in statute that is supposed to forward the act once it's approved. I may be repeating. But what I wanted to say, y'all, is that, you know, this was unfortunate. It was a mistake. It was an oversight. I do not want to, the, the fact that their statute is there is a fact. We are not throwing those folks under the bus, so to speak. Secretary of State staff have been extremely responsive for us in a number of sticky situations that y'all have endured with us. So we appreciate their partnership, and you know, we probably should have been mindful on our side as well. So, you know, there's plenty of that to go around. The good news is we've been able to rectify it, and with your vote today, move forward. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Ms. Fambro, you've not had a chance. Would you like to speak?
I'll take another opportunity, but not right now.
Okay. The question I had has been answered. It was who is responsible, and it sounds like ultimately one party is responsible, but all of us working together, it fell through the cracks. So I don't see any reason to point fingers at anyone for a simple mistake. I think the director addressed this in an email. My question is, should we approve this? We can then include it on the same ballot at the end with the other constitutional amendment questions, and everything will be okay, except for those few UACAVA voters, which we've done what we can.
Yeah, I do have a question now. Could we possibly have a copy of that, or Director Sosby, are you able to read that to us today, how it appears on the ballot?
It's at the bottom of the resolution.
Is it? Okay, thank you.
There's no line, but also, Ms. Fambro, if you go to the legislators page, which I'm happy to send you after the meeting, and you pull up House Bill 797, in the bill, it also includes
The language?
the language, yes. But it's in the resolution that Ms. Pappas sent us today. I see that Ms. Pappas has her hand up. Chair recognizes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Raffle. And I believe in the email that I sent you all with the resolution was also a copy of House Bill 797, which does have the language for the referendum word for word in that as well. So Ms. Fambro, you should have a copy of that House bill with the language of the question for the referendum.
Thank you.
Chair Raffle, I do have another question.
Chair recognizes Ms. Till. Go ahead.
The statement that you've just made that we would vote on this might be directed to Attorney Pappas or Attorney Drake. That do we have the authority to vote against this and deny people the opportunity to save money on their taxes? It was my understanding that the legislature had written this and that it was to come to us just to add to the November 8th election, and not that we could actually vote against it and deny people this opportunity. That's my question for the attorneys.
I'll take that question. Thank you. That's a good question. What the board is voting on today is a resolution to approve the call of a local referendum election pursuant to the requirements of House Bill 797 to be held on November 8, 2022 in conjunction with the general election for the purpose of submitting an act related to homestead exemptions to the electors for approval or rejection. Section 5 of House Bill 797 provides that the election superintendent shall conduct the election on November 8, 2022, and shall issue the call for the election. So that's what we are required to do. That vote to approve the call for the election. With respect to the question of whether the individuals, members of the board, could choose not to approve this, I would say that if this weren't approved, we would probably receive what's called a mandamus action petitioning us. We could, from an elector, to do our duty and approve this. So I think it's in the best interest of everyone to approve it. I will say that I always want to be full disclosure that I know it's my understanding in talking to the attorney for the Secretary of State last week that there was a county, and I believe Board of Elections, I think in Henry County, that had a similar situation, and they apparently voted not to do it, and they were sued for mandamus. And he indicated they won. They said it was too busy of a time to try and hold this election, but I don't know any other details. I just always want to have full disclosure, but I do recommend that the board approve this.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to take this moment to say that I support this, and I believe that we should, it's my hope that it's unanimously approved. And at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to, should we just read the title?
I would just take a motion to approve the resolution and then read the title
Okay,
of the
so
resolution.
at this point, the chair will approve a motion to approve call of a local referendum election pursuant to the requirements of HB 797 to be held on November 8, 2022 in conjunction with the general election for the purpose of submitting an act related to homestead exemptions to the electors for approval or rejection.
I make that motion.
Was that you, Ms. Till, with the initial motion?
Yes, it was me.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, second by Ms. Fambro. All those in favor or wishing to vote yes, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, that looks like it's unanimous. So we have that added to the ballot. So that's great news. On a housekeeping matter, Ms. Sosby and Ms. Perkins, if you're here, I don't think so. Could we, members, come by the office throughout tomorrow to put ink on this? What's the best way for us to do that? Just come to the front or?
Fine, we'll have it up front.
Okay. Is there a deadline you need us to come and all fully sign it, or is the vote sufficient enough at this point?
I can speak to that. I think the vote is sufficient, but y'all's policy and practice has always been to sign your resolution. So if individuals could get by board members as promptly as possible, that would be good. But I think this vote is enough for the staff to move forward with the action.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can personally make it until Wednesday.
Yeah,
but-
so I think we're good.
Yeah, all right. At this point, the next item on the agenda are announcements. And the announcements read as follows. Our October regular meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 11th at 4:30 p.m. at the Planning Commission building. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Upcoming deadlines for the 2022 elections, which there are two on October 11th. That's the earliest day that an absentee ballot can be mailed, excuse me. And the last day to register to vote in time for the November general election. Advanced voting begins on October 17th. And you can find dates and times on the accgov.com website. October 28th is the last day to submit an absentee ballot application for the November election. And of course, Election Day is on November 8th. If there are no further announcements or questions, Ms. Fambro?
In view of some things that have happened over the weekend, I'm confused. And since this was directed toward our full board, I'm wondering if we need to have an emergency meeting.
I guess I'm not understanding the request.
I really don't want to talk about it because it was sent under the cover of privilege information.
Okay.
So I don't feel at liberty to say exactly what it is.
Okay. Miss Pappas, could you help us out here on this, or Mr. Drake?
Yeah, I can speak to it, and I, you know, it was over the weekend. Myself, Director Sosby, I think you were on it, Chairman Raffle. I can't remember who the other individuals were. Some of maybe the Secretary of State's office, I think, was on there. Received a letter advising this board of the potential for a legal action to seek injunctive relief against this board proceeding forward with the election in March, and outlining various reasons why the election should be, this attorney felt the election should be in November. And I would say that's not privileged. It would be a public record. I mean, it does relate litigation, but that document itself is not privileged. So I think I would guess that's probably what member Fambro is speaking about.
I am.
Okay. Attorney, do you think we need to have a meeting on the topic? It's my understanding that a judge has not taken any action at this point. So
That, you know, the question of, you know, that letter at this point is threat of litigation. It's always the discretion of this board whether it would like to hold a special call meeting to discuss potential litigation. So that's a decision the board needs to make. You know, you're right, though, no formal litigation's been filed.
when litigation is filed, how timely are you and we notified of that?
I would certainly notify this board immediately. I sent the email to y'all when I saw that Sunday morning after I got it Saturday evening. So I would, as any time we get litigation, I'll immediately notify you.
Okay.
On receipt. The whole entire board, not just you.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
You sent it to all of us. Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I'd like to ask Attorney Drake, just from past experience, if litigation is filed, does the judge normally come back fairly quickly, or what is the time span that the process takes?
Well, I would say from my experience, you know, it depends on the type of litigation. Obviously, when it involves an election, it's usually put on a fast track by the court because the need for there to be an expedient decision, you know, with election pending. So if there's anything we're filed, I'd expect to move promptly, very quickly. That's my experience.
Okay, thank you. I think in that case, if you're going to have a special meeting, I think we should wait till it has been litigated at least, and if not, after the judge makes a decision, assuming it is litigated.
Well, I would say no. I would say if we get a lawsuit, I agree with Commissioner. I agree we need to immediately. I would request that y'all probably have a special call
Okay.
meeting to discuss it.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah. But
So at this point, let's all keep an eye on our emails and our phones and our texts and all that stuff. And Judd will send out the bat signal and we'll go from there. So at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I so move.
Motion, Ms. Fambro, second. A second by Mr. Shirley. All those in favor, raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you everyone for your time. Have